Hey guys, this is question MM149 of the Maths Methods Fortify study guide. So in this question, unfortunately, Queensland Jones gets bitten by a venomous spider and is actually going to die soon. So this is really not good and we need to figure out what's going on here. So we've got this concentration of venom in C millimoles per litre, and it is a continuous function of time where, you know, the C is our poison or venom value. So this is the concentration of the venom in Queensland's blood at any given time. Now, first question in A asks us to show that the value of A is 2. So this is the A that they're talking about here. So the question tells us that C is a continuous function of time, which means that at these crossover points, so at 3 on 2 here, this and this function have to be equal to the same thing. They have to be at a point of intersection because they're continuous, okay? They can't be broken up. Same at 9 on 2 and 9 on 2. So what we're going to do is we know that there is a point of intersection at t equals 3 on 2 because it's continuous, all right? So at a point of intersection, these two functions actually equal each other. So 8 plus 4 cos 2 pi t over 3 is equal to a take 2 cos of 2 pi t over 3. And we know that t has to equal 3 on 2 at these points. So 8 plus 4 cos of 2 over 3 pi times 3 over 2 is just equal to pi. And if you sub that in, you'll see how that works. Cos of pi as well. All right, so cos of pi is equal to -1, which means we have 8 plus 4 -1 equals a take 2 times -1. Awesome. Which means we get a plus 2 and a take 4. Sorry, 8 take 4. And then therefore a equals 2. So that's our answer, guys. That is 1 mark. So that's just your first mark there. Awesome. What we're going to do now is actually sketch the graph of C versus T. And let's maybe just clear a bit of space here. Yeah, let's get rid of this. So we know that A is equal to 2, so I'm going to replace that with a 2, and we're now on part B. So 2 minus 2 cos. Awesome. So first things first is we need to check out our graphs here. So maybe let's start with 0 to 3 on 2, and then 9 on 2 to 6. Okay, so this is a little bit complex and kind of time consuming, so we'll see how we go. C of t and t. Now, let's work out the maximum and minimum of each one of these so that we can work out our scale and what it's going to look like. So our minimum for this function here is 8 minus 4, which is 4. So maybe let's just even write min equals 4, and the maximum is 8 plus 4, which is 12. So max equals 12. Our minimum for this is 2 minus 2, which is 0. So min equals 0. And our maximum is 2 plus 2, which is max equals 4. Sweet. So our minimum is going to be 0, and our maximum is going to be 12. Okay, put 12 up here. Let's go 6, 3, 9. Awesome. Now, we are going to sketch it for the whole function, which is from 0 to 6. All right, so 6 is up here, and we need to go from 3 on 2, and this is 9 on 2. So from 0 to 3 on 2, we are sketching this function here. Let's just start with that. So we've got 2 take 2 cos of 2 pi t on 3, and we need to work out our period and amplitude and midpoint for these things. So for this graph here, our midpoint is going to be this point here, which is 2, and our amplitude is going to be 2 as well. So let's maybe write that. This is there's a lot going on here. So for this one here, let's call this equation 1 and this equation 2. So for equation 2, our amplitude is 2 and our midpoint is also 2. And our period is equal to 2 pi over 2 pi over 3, which is equal to 3. Okay, so period is 3, midpoint and amplitude are 2 each. Sweet. So period equals 3, which means that from 0 to 3 on 2, it does half of a period, all right? So half of a period means that it gets from the bottom to the top, and the top is our maximum at 4, which means that we have a 4 here. The midpoint is at 2, which is here, which means that our first part of the graph goes up like this. Awesome. Now, if we were to keep going, because remember that's this bit here, that's 0 to 3 on 2, but we haven't taken into account the 9 on 2 to 6, which is this section here. If we were to keep drawing this, it would kind of keep going down like this, and up like this, and down like this, right? Because it's a trig function, so it keeps going up and down. So from 9 on 2, it starts here and goes down to 6. Down to 6. Sorry, that was terrible. Awesome, and then let's just erase this so it's not sitting there. Cool, so that's our equation 2 sketched, right? So this is the concentration of the venom in his bloodstream. So what we need to do from here is now sketch this graph. So our middle of this one is 8, so this is our midpoint, 8. Our amplitude is 4, and our maximum is 12. So we know that these two functions are continuous, right? So we know that there has to be a point of intersection here somewhere. This is a positive cos graph, which means it would have started at 12, come down here because the period is also the same, right? So for 1, our amplitude is 4, our mid is 8, and our period is also 3 because it has 2 pi t over 3 as well. So from here to here is 3, which means we're going to have a whole period in here. It would have come down here to come up here like this. But we don't have this section because we're only doing from 3 on 2 to 9 on 2, which means we only have this section here. And that's how we sketch our graph. So this here is 3, 12. This here is 3 on 2, 4. And this here is 9 on 2, 4, 6, 0, 0, 0. Awesome. Guys, that's our function sketched. If you have any questions about that, please let me know. Again, all 3 marks kind of come here with graphing. Again, really hard to know, but just make sure you do all of this and you will be fine. Sweet. I know that's a difficult graph. I know it's a lot. I know it's time consuming, but it's just got to be done. So I'm going to leave this here because it's probably going to help us with our next section. And it's just going to help us visualize stuff. So the concentration of venom in his blood. So we're on to part C now. So the concentration of venom in Queensland's blood immediately starts to decrease when Queensland administers the antidote. How long does it take him to get back to the camp and inject the antidote? And what is the concentration of venom in his blood at this time? Cool. So at this point here, this is where he gets back to the camp, right? Because as soon as he injects the antidote, the venom starts decreasing in his bloodstream. So at this point here is when he administers the antidote and gets back to the camp. So at t equals 3, that's when he gets back to the camp, according to our graph. And you can just say, like, according to graph, like in part B, if you want. T equals 3. Takes him 3 hours. So remember, we have to answer the question, right? So how long does it take him to get back to the camp? 3 hours. And inject the antidote. And what is the concentration of venom in his blood at this time? So concentration equals 12 millimoles per liter. Awesome. This is your first mark. How long does it take? Second mark is the concentration in his bloodstream. Awesome. That's it for question C. It's pretty straightforward. D. If the venom's concentration rises above 10 millimoles per litre, Queensland is considered to be at a high risk of having a heart attack. Queensland gets bitten at 3:40 p.m. At what time does he first become at risk of having a heart attack? Cool. So this is just a 1-mark question, guys. And according to our graph, around here is where we might have 10 millimoles per litre in our bloodstream, right? So 10 millimoles per litre here. And we need to figure out at what time does he first get bitten? Sorry, does it first rise above 10 millimoles per litre? So all we need to do is figure out at which point that 10 is. So first of all, we need to identify which part of the graph this 10 is on, and we can see that it's on this top graph here because that's between 3 on 2 and 9 on 2. So that means that 10 is equal to 8 plus 4 cos 2 pi t over 3, and we basically just need to solve for t. So from here, we can see that, sorry guys, 1 second, cool. So we can see that 1/2 is equal to cos 2 pi t over 3, which means that inverse cos of 1/2 is equal to 2 pi t over 3. And so t is equal to 1/2 from here. Actually, let me just, I won't skip that many steps. So inverse cos of 1/2 is equal to pi on 3. So 2 pi t on 3. These two can cancel, the pi's can cancel. You get 1 equals 2t, so t equals 1/2. So that means that it would have actually been up here somewhere, right? So here would be t equals 1/2 if that was to keep going. But we don't want that. We want this, right? So the distance from 3 on 2 to 1 on 2 is the same as the distance from 3 on 2 to here, right? Because it's symmetrical. If this is 1 on 2, that means that this distance is 1, which means that this distance is also 1. So this is equal to 5 on 2 at 10 millimoles per litre. So therefore t equals 5 on 2 at 10 millimoles per litre. And that is your almost final answer, keeping in mind that it's after the time, okay? So t equals 5 on 2 is the same as t equals 2.5. Let me just get rid of this. So t equals 2.5. And remember, t is the amount of time after he's bidden, and it just tells us now that Queensland gets bidden at 3:40 p.m, which means that the time is equal to 3:40 plus 2.5 hours, which gives us 6:10 p.m. This is your final answer, and it's a 1-mark question, guys. That is your final answer for that. And let's move on to part E. So we get, let's get rid of this. During this whole unfortunate event, what is the total length of time for which Queensland is at risk of having a heart attack? Awesome. So he's at risk of having a heart attack above 10 millimoles per litre, right? So this whole section here, okay? So if this bit here is equal to 5 on 2 and the maximum occurs at 3, that means that from here to here is the same distance or the same time as from here to here, okay? Which means that from 5 on 2 to 3 is 3 minus 5 on 2, so time, equals 3 minus 5 on 2, which is equal to 1/2, right? 3 take 2.5 is 1/2. That's from here to here, which means that the total amount of time, so this is your first mark, your total amount of time is that amount times 2. So time is equal to 1/2 times 2, which is equal to 1 hour. And that's your second mark, guys. So that's your final answer for this question. Again, just keep in mind that you need to include units, and you can basically just leave it from there. Guys, that is it for question MM149. Please hit me up if you have any questions. But apart from that, guys, have an awesome day.